Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto Nexus 2.0 and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto was neglected by his family and Itachi saved him part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. It was a quiet night in Konoha. The village hidden in the leaves. Unlike the night before where there was celebration for most, but a living nightmare for one young boy. A festival celebrating the defeat of the Kyuubi at the hands of the Yondaime Hokage. The fourth in a line of great village leaders throughout village history. That boy would be 7-year-old Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto was a child who had the heart of gold, but most either ignored him or persecuted him for reasons he never understood. And those who were cruel to him or ignored him were not willing to explain their actions to said child. His innocent mind could not comprehend what he had done that was so wrong. Today he found himself opening his eyes in a room that was not his own. In a bed he was not altogether not unfamiliar with. It smelled clean, but cold and clinical. His body ached from head to toe. His mind foggy, and his eyesight not much better currently. His neck hurt and he noted that he could not move his hands or legs. Instead of panicking, he took in a painful deep breath as he did something he practiced many times before as the old man Sandaime Hokage, one of the very few people Naruto trusted, taught him to do. He whistled. But not just a straight single chord, but a specific tune meant to bring forth his hidden guardian angel. A single shinobi hidden by the moonlight. Some were aware of this special tune and moved quickly to prevent its sound from being heard. And little did Naruto know, a small amount of chakra, a mixture of his life's physical and spiritual energy was incorporated into this tune to ensure it could not be used by anyone else. Unfortunately, Naruto again seemed to be in a position which he would not be able to seek the safety of his protector. The moment Naruto attempted the tune he noted a shadow over his eyes. It was still semi-dark in the room as the sun had not fully arisen. Before a third note could be released, his nose was covered tightly and he heard a woman's voice that commanded him, "Be silent, or this will be far more painful," as he was forced out of consciousness due to the lack of air not reaching him. He was tied down and expected to finally be put out of his 7 years of misery. An early end to a morbid and painful young life. But to his joy, or displeasure, he hadn't decided which at the particular moment, a black blade flew through the window. It stabbed the woman's hand which held Naruto's mouth and nose, but did not touch him. The precision of the blade was meticulous and highly professional. It was downright dangerous and the assassin knew her time on this earth was likely at an end. But she had a mission to complete. She drew the blade from her pierced hand, and proceeded to impale young Naruto between his innocent eyes with the same blade. Halfway through the motion, a silver Tonto intervened. Holding the Tonto was a silver-haired man with a black mask covering his face, with one eye covered by his headband, and he wore the armor of the Hokage's personal guard. Team RO, the Daizensdai Sotodansu. The Hokage's third-generation sword dance which normally consisted of Hatake Kakashi, Tenzo, Uchiha Itachi, Gekko Hayate and Yugao. The assassin showed no fear. She leapt back toward the door exiting the strangely large hospital room and instead of trying to escape, she twisted the blade around and swiftly sliced the blade across her midriff, then reverse thrust the blade into her stomach. Seppuku. The art of killing oneself due to failing to uphold one's honor or the honor of their master or family, the boy's savior noted. The master guardian placed 2 gloved fingers on the boy's neck and noted a slow and shallow breathing. Even then the breathing was getting weaker. He was poisoned. Something on the woman's hands must have contained some form of poison. The mysterious savior turned on the light, and immediately opened the door, called out to the nurses, Anbu protocol in effect. I am Anbu and a captain of Konoha Secret Service, codenamed Wolf. Get word to the Hokage of a phantom who tried to snuff out the light of a protected kit. The nurses didn't know what the code meant, but those hidden in the shadows of the inner workings of the hospital did. Within seconds, 3 triage nurses arrived and began analyzing the poison residue from the would-be assassin's glove. 2 minutes later, a gust of wind was felt as a swirl of leaves materialized. As the leaves dropped, an old man appeared in their wake. His old eyes fell to the unconscious boy, hardened, and asked all, "What is Naruto's condition?" The old man's anger could be felt in waves as the nurses and the newly arrived doctors could barely stand in his presence. "We managed to get some of the poison out, Hokage-sama. It is slowing the degeneration of his tissues down, but it is not stopping it," the closest doctor offered despite the pressure being exerted just to stay on his feet. "How long does he have?" the Hokage asked dangerously. "A week at most, as we know little to nothing about this poison, and the forensics lab was never finished since." Wolf. "Prepare a squad of 4 including Crow and Raven and meet me on the roof of my office building. Team RO is going on one more mission before it's dissolving." Without a word, Wolf vanished, and 5 more guards appeared as if by magic. The old Hokage nodded his approval and vanished soon after in a puff of smoke. Atop the Hokage tower stood 20 loyal personal guards. But of those, only 3 were in the Hokage's Sandai show. Team RO who were in front all looked over to the side when a green spandex-clad man with a bowl cut arrived. He knelt beside Team RO, prepared to explain his being there. "This is an Anbu meeting, Maida guy. Speak," the annoyed Hokage commanded. Before his ridiculously green spandex-clad rival spoke, Wolf stated simply, "If our mission is what I believe it to be, we will need all of the muscle we can get, which is why I asked Maida guy to join us. Otherwise, all that will remain would likely be the splattered blood of our remains against the wall of whatever town she is currently residing in." After a brief moment, the Hokage found himself agreeing with his first captain. The Lord Hokage nodded, and stated, "Someone who was under my direct protection was harmed in my village. Team RO, alongside John and Maida guy, your mission is S-class. The highest ranking mission possible, so you know that failure is not an option. Wolf, Crow, Raven, Bonsai, and Guy. Bring my student home. Bring me Senju Tsunade." Normally his corps of soldiers would have vanished in quick motions almost faster than the eye could see, as his word as Hokage was nothing short of law. He however noted their hesitation and looked to the head captain and asked, "What is it, Wolf?" "Tsunade-sama was given autonomy from the village many years ago. Attempting to convince her or forcibly retrieve her may prove difficult," Wolf warned as he knew of the dangerous woman's legendary reputation, not only as a compulsive loser at gambling, but as one of the most dangerous kunoichi alive. A shinobi. A ninja whose guile was not needed often, as her fist were enough to tear very mountains asunder, or so the legends proclaimed. For the first time since the village went on high alert at the hospital intrusion, the old Hokage pulled out his ancient pipe, lit it and took a drag off of it as he shook his head. His expression became cold once more and stated with unwavering conviction, "Bring her home, or worst case I will mark her as an S-rank missing nin. I don't have time to deal with her personal problems right now. She is on extended leave only. She understood this when she left. She is still a registered kunoichi of the Konoha." He stopped speaking momentarily and placed his hand out in a certain direction. A hidden member of the Anbu guard appeared and handed him pen and paper. He jotted down a few things and handed the sealed note to Wolf, who placed it in his satchel. The Hokage placed his right arm out to the side and every member of his armed forces vanished from the rooftop, leaving only him and the 3 Anbu that he chose as his alternate personal guards. As daylight illuminated the sky, it was not the beautiful sunshine which was expected. The clouds were gray. The wind cold and dry as the squad of 4 raced across the rooftops until they reached the front gate of the village. The silver-haired young man with the partial mask, known as Wolf, nicked his thumb, and proceeded to go through 5 hand seals. Special practiced motions with controlled burst of chakra. Once completed, he slammed his hand to the ground and stated the correct activation command, Kuchio's no Jutsu. A small puff of white smoke materialized, and two dogs walked out of the smoke. One was a golden retriever who wore a red jacket with the word Hitaki written on the back of it in kanji. The retriever, eyes sharp, with a small Konoha headband over his eyes, looked up at the man who summoned him and bowed slightly. The smaller gray dog, a bulldog who wore a blue jacket and a similar headband, but around his neck. The smaller of the two dogs stepped forward and said, "I told you not to summon us while you are using that ridiculous moniker. Why not change it to Hound or something cool? But Wolf, at least summon us as yourself." Wolf dreaded this part of his contract with his animal partners. They could be a bit nitpicky, but he didn't have time to deal with it and hoped the situation was dire enough to satisfy the most easygoing of his canine partners. "We have been tasked with bringing Tsunade-sama back to Konoha, kicking and screaming if we must," was Wolf's stoic reply. The little bulldog's jaw dropped, slobber fell, and both dogs shivered. He then nodded and said, "Good luck, Wolf, and don't get yourself killed." Two of the Anbu of Team RO were astounded to find a rare Ninken, talking ninja dogs. It was extremely rare to find talking Ninken, but their professionalism held firm until the dog's last statement, and then the gravity of the situation finally hit them all. They were on a mission to bring back one of the most dangerous people alive who wanted nothing more than to gamble her life away and to continue teaching her apprentice the way of the medical battlefield shinobi. "Thanks, Pakun," Wolf acknowledged the bulldog. "Here." He pulled out a piece of cloth that he acquired from the Senju estate and handed it to Pakun and his Ninken partner for the day, Ninja Dog Boss. The boss Ninken finally spoke up. "This is likely my last mission, Wolf. I have pups at home who need me, and two who are even considering joining the Konoha Ninken Corps in a few years. I need to be there and ready for them. Pakun will be taking my place as this pact's leader," much to both Wolf and Pakun's surprise, but neither showed it. That in and of itself made him proud. Wolf and Pakun bowed and said, "As you wish, Inu no Masuda." Master of Dogs. His title in this instance rather than a name out of respect of his service. One of Team RO cleared his throat to emphasize that time was not on their side. Wolf nodded and asked the Inu no Masuda, "I believe Master Jiraiya, another of the legendary Sannin, is currently residing on Mount Myoboku, home of the shinobi toads. Can one of you lead one of us to Tsunade, and the other get word to Master Jiraiya of what's happening? But please, more than anything else in the world, make sure Jiraiya knows we are trying to get Tsunade back to heal his godson. Jiraiya-sama has stayed current on his security clearance. Hopefully he can get to Tsunade-sama first and calm her before we arrive. One of the legendary Sannin is scary enough to have to consider fighting. But as long as he knows it's concerning his godson, we might survive this endeavor yet." The golden retriever nodded and vanished in a puff of smoke. Pakun took another sniff of the cloth from the old Senju estate and noted, "I thought my mind was playing tricks on me, but she is here in the land of fire. I believe she was over near Tanzuki town. The gambling paradise." Wolf froze in place, as he feared he would have to face off against Tsunade before Jiraiya arrived. His palms began to sweat, and for the first time in many years, he felt fear. Even at his most professional, those around him did not completely miss it either. He took in a deep breath and reminded himself, "I am a member of Konoha's Anbu. The most elite of the elite. I graduated the academy at age 7 when most don't until they are at least 12. I became captain of an Anbu assassination squad at age 13. Age 14 I was a member of the Hokage's personal guard. I've got this," he thought as he calmed his heart rate. His team of Raven, Guy, Bonsai and Crow nodded that they were prepared for whatever came next. The four took to the trees and flew from branch to branch in the chilled air, as did Pakun, who took the lead. He stopped every 15 minutes or so to try to pick the scent back up as the now heavier winds blew and light rains carried the scent in multiple directions. Fortunately Pakun was still very young, and one of the best non-human trackers Wolf ever had the pleasure of working with. After a full day of travel, Anbu Banzai stopped, causing the others to do the same. I know that you and Guy have this insanely inhuman training regime, but the rest of us need rest, Wolf-senpai, he joked lightly, which caught most off guard except Wolf, who knew his younger Kahai held a sense of humor. The group stopped and Banzai placed his hands in seals specific to him and added the requisite chakra. Within seconds a wood cabin was built. It was small as to be hidden off the main road, but large enough for the travelers to stretch out and rest on the wooden beds. Good old Banzai, Crow thought. Shelter from the weather, bugs and snakes. I'll take first watch. We'll need our strength if we are forced to take on Tsunade-sama. Shifts of 3 hours each until we are fully replenished, and can make the last leg of this journey. Hopefully she will be too drunk to notice us until we have her transported back to Konoha. Wolf quickly placed sound special fuinjutsu seal barriers up around the cabin so that sound would not escape, but could still be heard from the outside. Guy simply moved to an empty bed, but looked over at his rival with the black mask covering his face, who had managed to have a bed on top of the wood, a comforter and pillows. He had to know and asked, how? Wolf pulled out an orange book after he sat on his bed and got comfortable. After a moment Wolf glanced at his old friend and did something he hadn't done since their youth. You say something, Guy? As he turned back to his book, not revealing just how versatile and bad fuinjutsu really could be. Slightly frustrated, Maida Guy reverted back to his 13-year-old self and said, damn you and your cool hip attitude, Ka. Wolf. Was all Wolf said, and fell asleep, leaving the normally stone-faced, stoic members of the Anbu laughing at their temporary teammate. It diffused the tension in the air and allowed them to replenish mentally as well as physically and spiritually. Konoha. Another night had fallen upon the village hidden in the leaves, but all was not peaceful as it should have been. There were tears of angst and unbridled outrage. The Uchiha clan, one of the precious, most prolific in the Leaf, and one of the very founding clans of Konoha, were exterminated less than 2 hours past. Flashback 2 hours prior. 2 blocks outside the Uchiha estate, a 7-year-old Uchiha Sasuke saw fire, lightning, earth and stone which flew in every which direction. Metal blades clanged as tiny kunai knives made impact with each other, whether in hand or as projectiles. His legs, which could barely move, pushed past his shock. His satchel dropped and he propelled himself faster than he thought possible. He barely made it 30 feet before a Konoha Jonin in his green flak jacket and black pants with a katana strapped to his back swooped in like a bird of prey, and carried young Sasuke back to the Shinobi Academy. The jolt of speed left Sasuke disoriented and unable to object. Having stopped, Chunin teachers and students immediately looked to see what the recent fuss was about as the bandana-wearing Jonin appeared in a cloud of leaves with a disoriented young Sasuke. Yumi no Iruka, Chunin-sensei asked, "What's going on, Genma-san?" Sasuke is old enough to walk home by himself. Genma, while he respected Yumi no-san, didn't take kindly to being questioned by a subordinate rank, but due to time constraints, he let it slide and said, "The Uchiha compound is under attack. Sasuke's brother is a friend of mine and asked that I watch over him while he was on a mission on his way toward the main gate. Get all remaining students back inside now. I want barriers in place. Keep those kids safe, even if it means you give up your life for theirs." Without hesitation, Yumi no Iruka nodded appreciatively and replied with, "Yokai." A simple way to say Roger, or, Roger that, Genma thought with a small smirk as he turned to rush to find the Hokage. Raven and Crow were to be the party to exterminate the Uchiha should they ever rise against the village itself, as they were members of the clan and could infiltrate meetings of the higher-ups there. But as they were out on a mission, it's reasonable to assume the Uchiha clan's council figured out Raven and Crow's place in the grand scheme of things. That meant speeding up what needed to be done, and only when they were outside of the village. The council of Crow's father, the head of the Uchiha clan, alongside Crow's reluctant mother, and a few others of note. They were tired of being treated like second-class citizens and that they didn't matter anymore. And that the Uchiha were the most powerful in the Land of Fire. The very village hidden in the leaves. But hubris was to be their downfall. Every man, woman and child of the Uchiha save Raven, Crow, and possibly Sasuke were dead as he vanished without a trace from the academy grounds. The only child missing. End flashback. Hokage Tower Conference Room 3 hours later. The Hokage was willing to speak to the Uchiha and try to help them regain some of the respect and prestige should a meeting he set up have occurred. But alas, it wasn't meant to be. He called together a council of the 3 elders and looked at each of them. His gaze lingered on his old friend Danzo, whose body was bandaged as if half dead, and quietly stated, "Return Sasuke Uchiha to me unharmed and you will live to see another day." Before the council of elders could protest, Sarutobi Hiruzen, Sandaime Hokage of Konoha, the village hidden in the leaves, raised his left arm, and 50 of his Anbu elite appeared and held swords to the Sandaime's old shinobi squad teammates Kaharu and Homara. The last member of the elders had shinobi of his own in Anbu gear arrive from the shadows and block the swords from touching their master's neck. The old Hokage merely smiled. Not a joyous smile, but one filled with nearly murderous glee and terrifying determination. He then stated, "Surrender the Uchiha, and the eyes of those you gouged from the corpses of the dead are face not only Konoha justice as a traitor, but my wrath. You did not disband the organization known as Root as I commanded years ago, as evidenced by your shinobi being present here. Root is despicable, and its usefulness came to an end after the last war. You performed genocide on a clan without the support of your Hokage, and the entire council of clans. Your time as an elder is over, and your career as a shinobi is as well. Now surrender Sasuke or die. I can assure you, Danzo, my stick is bigger than yours." Danzo was a dangerous man, and would not go down without a fight. He simply said, "These are a few leftover shinobi from an era bygone and who refused to leave my side. As for the Uchiha, I had nothing to do with that, nor is there any proof of any of this madness you are spouting, Hiruzen. If anything, you may have been known as the professor in your younger days, but you have gone senile, old man." Got him. Danzo thought to himself. Then let me enlighten you as to why I was called that. If it was you who took Sasuke, you would likely take him to a base you believe I am unaware of. One that is further away from the carnage. Possibly the Riku base. The Sandaime offered. Danzo didn't show it, but he suddenly felt a pit in the bottom of his stomach. The Sandaime then placed his hand in an odd head seal and an explosion could be heard. It was one of the known, former, root bases from a time long past. "You see, old friend, I knew exactly what you've been up to. I have had my own Anbu infiltrating your root organization for years. I know every location and every shady deal you have made. The only reason you have not been executed yet is because in your own sick, twisted way. You do everything you do to protect the leaf. So let's play a little game. It would take about an hour to get to your Riku base at top speed and it's been about 45 minutes. Let's see, who do I have out that far? Oh yeah, I have a promising young woman who I entrusted with the hand seals to specifically signal the destruction of Root. If she didn't receive my signal not to begin, she would give a counter signal to all true Anbu through use of these wonderful little items called headsets. And it looks like time is just about you." Explosions erupted from all around the village and larger explosions could be seen in the distance. Danzo could no longer hide his disdain and was nearly frothing at the mouth. "You 3 have been my teammates for a time. My friends, and now my adversaries it seems. I had some of my resources look into what occurred with Uzumaki Naruto as well. It was a poison made by Chiyo of Sunagaku no Sato. The only reason we are not going to war is because the purchase was tracked back to you two, Homaru and Kaharu." "Why?" The two took in a deep defeated breath and Kaharu began, "We believed you were getting too close to the demon. The closest Anbu went to decapitate her, but was stopped by a glance from the Sandaime. You know my laws. You will not refer to Naruto as a demon. Naruto's burden does not make him a demon. Only a container for the nine-tailed beast. You two are old enough and should know better. You know the sacrifice his parents made in order for him to be seen as a hero. After another uncomfortable moment, Homura stated, look at the depths you are willing to go through for an orphan. You have deployed 4 of our finest shinobi to bring back Tsunade of the Sannin. That is on par with sending them on a kamikaze mission. It's potentially suicide. Hiruzen looked to Danzo and asked, do you know who Crow is? And don't lie. We are far beyond secrets right now. Danzo reluctantly nodded. Well, what you might not know is that Sasuke is Crow's little brother. The world stood still. Crow could be the nicest man in the world. He was a man of peace and loved his village more than anything save his brother. 7 years ago, Sasuke was kidnapped and Crow, before he was Crow, was unleashed for the first time. He not only decimated a small village, but nearly put the Sandaime, and the Yondaime Hokage in the hospital when told he could not go after Sasuke. And, yes, I am putting this here as I keep getting complaints about Itachi being an overpowered Gary Stew. Itachi essentially sucker punched Hiruzen and Minato. He didn't win in an all-out fight. He is a ninja. He fought dirty and was underestimated due to his age. I know he would not win in a straight-up fight against the Sandaime and Yondaime at age 10. Possibly ever. The Yondaime refused the Sandaime's wish to execute Crow for his action and reminded his old mentor, those who abandon their mission are scum, but those who abandon their comrades are worse than scum. His younger brother was in danger. Who is more of a comrade than a loved one? Not many remember just how dangerous that switch was inside of Crow's head. Apparently Danzo did. Hiruzen was no fool and knew exactly where Sasuke was taken and had his own elite shadows follow and retrieve him before the explosions began, but it was time to take back the reins of Konoha from those behind closed doors. Having Naruto get hurt shook the old man to his very soul, but he knew that the team sent was the only one strong enough to bring Tsunade home to help medically rebuild the now Uchiha-less village save 3 or 4. Sarutobi Hiruzen was known for his kind and forgiving nature, but that had also become a liability of late. He looked to his 3 former friends and shook his head sadly as he calmly commanded, I planned on letting Crow deal with this then when he returned, but he will have enough to deal with taking over as clan head of the Uchiha most likely. Execute them. Meanwhile, Tanzuka Town. After a few hours' rest, Team RO had arrived. It didn't take long to discover the location of the legendary sucker, as she was known. Tsunade's penchant for losing bets was legendary. If she won, that usually did not bode well. 6 hours ago she'd won what was tantamount to a small lottery. She was in essence, very rich again. That concerned her. But what concerned her more were the 3 Konoha Jonin who walked up to the table where she and her apprentice were counting up her winnings, as they no longer wore Anbu gear. The 45-year-old blonde woman recognized the silver-haired young man immediately as he was the protege of the Yondaime, the 4th Hokage. His favorite student, and prodigy in his own right. Normally she would have blown the ninja off immediately, but asked, the looks of fear and determination on your faces tell me that this is important. What brings you all the way to the edge of Hai no Kuni? Our beloved fire country, she spat. Kakashi stepped forward and handed Tsunade the first of 2 letters. Tsunade opened it and it read, Dear Tsunade, a young boy has been poisoned, and it's believed to be by your one-time rival Chio of Suna. I have sent 4 of the very best in the village to find you in hopes of bringing you home. We could not chance moving the boy. Chio's poison was likely bought by a clan head or elder. I will find out which and exterminate them quickly as I was named one of the guardians of the child when his parents died. He has a week from today before he likely succumbs to his illness. I know it's a lot, but we need you home. At least for now. Do this for your old sensei, please. Sarutobi Hiruzen. After reading the letter, Tsunade placed it over the lit candle which adorned her table. A large puff of smoke appeared beside the table, and a man around Tsunade's age in a red overcoat with a green jacket underneath. Toad and oil adorned his custom forehead protector as his long white spiky hair flowed unevenly. Tsunade glanced over to him and said, "I'm not going. The fact that they got you to join them will not change that fact," she warned. The normally loud, and admittedly super perverted Toad Sage Jiraiya looked to the one he was cleared to know as Crow and said, "Danzo ordered the attack on your clan. Only you two remain. Your brother is in critical condition at the Biowan," Jiraiya said as he slipped into his more familiar language of Konoha. He reminded himself that Biowan was hospital. He then looked at Tsunade and asked, "Remember what happened 7 years ago when the Uchiha child was kidnapped by the village hidden by steel, and how Sensei and Minato ended up with a few broken bones? They told a 10-year-old he could not attempt to rescue his brother. He is not only still alive, but he is one of the senior captains of our Anbu. And said village was nearly wiped off the map. I think the only reason Wolf is in command is because he leads Team RO when they are united," Jiraiya warned. "Senju Tsunade, allow me to introduce you to Uchiha Itachi." Tsunade looked over to said Uchiha, but now kept her eyes just below his, knowing of his family's penchant for eye-based hypnosis. Itachi spoke for the first time since retrieving the news as his hand now gripped the kunai blades in his pouch. "I had reason to bring you home as another is in great danger, and it was our Hokage's wish, but now failure is not an option. Will you come with us peacefully, Tsunade-sama?" Tsunade was curious and inquired, "And if I don't? I will beat you to within an inch of your life, have your protege here heal you, and drag you back kicking and screaming so you can heal my brother." Tsunade cracked her knuckles, and her neck appeared behind Itachi at an impossible speed and sent a punch toward his head. As the fist impacted, she found nothing but air, and crows dispersing as she then heard his smooth, classy voice, "You'll have to do much better than that if you want to defeat me, my lady." Kakashi looked over to Jiraiya, not knowing whose side he would take. It was no secret that the Super Toad Sage pervert of Konoha had a thing for the slug princess Tsunade. Jiraiya sighed and said, "It's my godson Naruto she is refusing to help by not going. I won't allow her to be hurt too badly, but she or her assistant Shizune must be taken back to Konoha to help Naruto." Right as Jiraiya finished saying his piece, another wall was destroyed. Tenzo, formerly known as Banzai, stepped to the side and asked his senpai, "So, are we going to get involved in this?" "No, but our good buddy made a guy as if Itachi can't finish this soon." The quiet assistant puckered her lips up and fired out metal senbons. Almost like little thread needles. They almost struck Tenzo and Kakashi near, or about dangerous pressure points. She removed her hood and glared at her childhood friends Kakashi and Guy. They in turn looked on in shock. They believed their friend to be dead. "Shizune?" Kakashi asked carefully. The bar on the far side of the casino establishment was now torn out of the floor and tossed effortlessly by Tsunade at Itachi, who for the first time this fight was grazed. Jiraiya hated what he had to do. He joined the fray. He walked over and stood face to face with Tsunade and said, "It's time to go home, Tsunade." "I no longer consider Konoha my home," she answered honestly. "I'm sorry you feel that way, but I have received a copy of these boys' orders. If you don't come home, you will be marked as a missing nin with an S-class bounty on your head. You will have to watch over your shoulder for the rest of your life. Ninja and civilian alike will try to lure you into a false sense of security, and pounce the moment you show even the slightest weakness. Don't make me have to fight you. Plus, it didn't say you had to stay in Konoha. You are just needed for now. It's there, brat," emphasizing whose child Naruto was. Jiraiya hoped his rare serious moment was enough to convince her of how important this mission was. As soon as he stopped, she walked up to him, back her fist and yanked it forward to create an impact across his face that caused the very air to tremble. He was knocked back a kilometer. One of the more dangerous elements now out of the way, she stepped outside to deal with an increasingly less patient Uchiha Itachi. She looked back to Itachi as he managed to hide long enough to give Jiraiya his chance. She then said, "I'm sorry about your brother, truly, but I lost my love and my little brother to the ninja world. I will not help the fools of the hidden leaf." Itachi stood firm, conviction in their hearts. Then they were blurs as they raced toward each other once again. "So this Joker's the one who took on Minato and the old man," Tsunade pointed to Itachi and snorted disbelievingly. "I'm not impressed." Itachi, who just learned of his family's fate, now spoke from the shadows of the darkly lit room, denied, "I'm not here to impress. I only managed to do so because they underestimated my desire to protect my little brother. On a head-on match, I would have been decimated. But that doesn't mean I can't handle my own," he warned as he threw multiple shuriken and kunai from what appeared to be every angle in the room at once. Tsunade realized what she was seeing wasn't possible and placed her hands in the requisite seal as she quickly called out, "Kai. Release," as she stopped the flow of chakra through her system and impressively dodged every single projectile while she kept an eye on her apprentice, who seemed to be holding her own well enough. It seemed as if they were not trying to use lethal force on her ward, and for that she was grateful. Not that Tsunade'd admit it. Jiraiya, who'd prepared for Tsunade's sneak attack, sent a Kage Bushin clone in his stead. He'd been correct to send the self-aware duplicate in his place. As the second clone flew back, he could see Tsunade getting very angry from the clone's memory transferring to him after its defeat. Every time one was knocked back, it disappeared in a puff of smoke seconds later. Shisui kept Shizune from interfering as his speed nearly doubled that of most other Konoha Jonin. The fight seemed as if it would last forever until a green blur appeared to fly through the air at a speed that caused the wind to whistle. Right as Tsunade's form twisted, it was a split second too late as a baritone voice called out, "Dynamic entry." The flying kick caught the distracted Tsunade off guard. As she lifted her body back off the ground, she looked to Guy and said, "This isn't over," before she passed out from the shock of the strike. Fortunately, Maeda Guy was a taijutsu expert and knew where and how to strike to avoid any vital spots and permanent injuries. Unfortunately for Guy, however, Tsunade losing consciousness was only a ruse. She flipped back up, kicked Guy in the chest, who flew through another wall which illuminated the room more as the light from the outside shone in. That gave Itachi less places to attack from. Tsunade's kick matched perfectly with where Jiraiya was standing outside as he was hit as Guy's body was propelled through the wall. Guy and Jiraiya stood up off the ground. Guy, who was a Jonin in his own right, was pissed, and was glad for his many years of training honing his body to be virtually unbreakable by normal shinobi. Tsunade was far above normal, but Guy built his body to take a beating. And now he was ready to doll out some of his own. Konoha's beautiful green beast, Maeda Guy looked at Jiraiya with a sadness as he lipped, "I'm sorry," and entered into a standard horse stance. Aura started to glow around him and he called out simply, "First gate." Kaiman. Gate of opening. Maeda Guy, being one of the rare true masters of the physical martial arts, was able to open a limiter on his chakra. It was a notable increase in speed and power. He steeled himself to incapacitate one of his taijutsu heroes. On the other side of the lounge, Shizune kept watch as best she could while she dodged attacks from Kakashi, whom she could tell was trying to stall rather than hurt her. The man she didn't know, who seemed to be able to use a Kekkei Genkai, thought lost since the death of the Shadaime years past. She was, however, getting tired. Shisui had had enough and managed to speed past all of Shizune's Senbon, kunai and even her directed poison mist. Not easily, as she was very well trained, but he was Shisui, the teleporter, for a reason. His speed only surpassed by Hitaki Kakashi and the now deceased Yondaime and Nadaime Hokage. He appeared behind her and held a kunai to her neck, and called out, "This ends now." Shizune popped away in a puff of smoke. Damn, Shisui realized. Kage Bushin. He swore as he was struck in the back of the neck by a Senbon and fell over unconscious. Jiraiya appeared behind the real Shizune, and struck the back of her neck, but not before she pulled slightly away from the blow. It was enough to not be knocked out despite the pain. She laid on the ground and waited motionless for the moment she could heal herself undetected. After a few moments, she was alone, her palms began to emit a green glow and she utilized her Shozen Jutsu, her mystical palm technique from her medical jutsu training to heal herself discreetly. Shizune, having witnessed all of the bloodshed, slowly stood up. Jiraiya, having caught this, saw that Shizune held her hands up in surrender. Jiraiya, not being a fool, threw a pair of chakra-suppressing cuffs over to her, who nodded and placed them on. This did not go unnoticed by Tsunade, who was trading blows with a much more ferocious Metagai and Itachi, as Tenzo and Shisui took a moment to catch their breath before heading back into battle. Shizune, what are you doing? Tsunade bellowed. Please stop, Tsunade-sama. This entire casino is almost completely destroyed, and we don't have the funds to pay for this. We should hear them out fully and possibly go back, as Konoha will pay for this misunderstanding if this is as important as I'm beginning to think it is. Tsunade, still on guard, thought about it and then lowered her guard carefully and said, not many know this, but I really left Konoha not only for me, but because of the pain Shizune felt at having no family left after the Third War. I didn't want her to have to live in a village that constantly reminded her of the loss of losing her Uncle Dan. Should we go? We are not staying, she warned. A tear threatened to fall from Shizune's eyes as she realized what her mother-like figure was doing for her. The possibility of bringing down the wrath of all of Konoha just to keep her happy. But that was not worth the life of a little boy, much less two, she noted. Shisui noted that Tsunade's flared-up chakra had settled and deactivated his Sharingan and nodded to Itachi, who reluctantly did the same. Tsunade glanced at Jiraiya and asked, so what in the seven heavens would send 3 Anbu, a taijutsu master Jonin, and Anther Sanin to bring me home? Who could be that important? Then it hit her. Her drunken stupor all but forgotten for a moment as she asked seriously, did you mean, there, son, when you said, there, son? Jiraiya nodded but kept his thoughts to himself for the moment. Kakashi looked at Jiraiya with a look of utter shock, as Naruto's history is one of Konoha's most guarded secrets. Then he asked, how? I am Konoha's external spymaster, as Danzo was its internal. Before he was beheaded a few hours ago anyway. My security clearance is higher than yours, kid, he explained to an incredulous Kakashi. Kakashi didn't like the fact that there were others the Hokage trusted more than him where Naruto were concerned, but then remembered that Jiraiya was once one of the Sandame's prized students. After taking in a deep breath, take the cuffs off of Shizune. We'll come peacefully, Tsunade ordered. Team Ro looked to Kakashi, who nodded. It's time to go home, Shisho, Shizune said as she took Tsunade's bag, which held her stash of sake she was not supposed to know about. Tsunade swore under her breath as she knew her student wouldn't surrender the bag while they traveled. Jiraiya walked over to the owner of the casino, who had just walked in, and handed him a bag of diamonds. More than the cost of rebuilding, the loss of customers for the time it took to rebuild, employee pay while out of work, and still have money over for improvements and renovations. The owner found out who caused all of the destruction, walked over to her and held out a hand, and Tsunade took it as he said, thank you, Tsunade-sama. We would have been forced to close in a few months. Now we have everything we need to stay open and more. Your debt to this establishment is wiped clean. Tsunade shook his hand in earnest with a great big smile on her face and began the charge home. She looked back at her old teammate and friend for a brief moment and said, this brat might just be worth saving after all. Let's not forget about my brother as well, Itachi warned. To keep tensions down, Kakashi ordered operational silence on his team the rest of the trip. The group picked rare medicinal herbs they saw along the way, as they might be useful in stopping rare poisons. They eventually stopped and rested at an inn for a few hours to get cleaned up, re-energized and prepared for the rest of the journey home. Tsunade considered trying to run for it, but Team Ro and Jiraiya were still relatively guarded and Shizune genuinely seemed like she wouldn't mind seeing home again, if just for a short visit. So she decided to steel herself and make her way home. Konoha Byowin. Room number. Classified by order of the Hokage. Uzumaki Naruto tossed and turned, his fevered body wanted to give in. To give up, but Naruto, while only a little boy, held a will and willpower of a fighter. A warrior that would not give up and never give in. That would one day become part of his nindo, his code of honor. His very ninja way should he survive long enough for Tsunade to arrive. But not all was as it seemed. Inside of Naruto's body resided some things out of the ordinary. Inside of Naruto was a spiritual world similar to that of the subconscious of others, but not many housed anything as infamous as what was housed inside of him. A force of nature in itself. The infamous Kyuubi no Yoko, the nine-tailed fox. It sat awake behind its caged doorway looking outward. Hate permeated nearly visibly in every direction. A massive orange nine-tailed beast whose lonely, intelligent eyes narrowed as he settled on his decision not to help the human child. His own fate linked to that of the blonde boy. The rage of 1,000 deaths rung throughout the large black empty space outside of the fox's cage as he howled out into the nothingness. He looked again at the cage which bound him with a piece of paper. A paper infused with the love of a mother and father who wished to protect their village, and their newborn son. The fox knew should the boy die, he too would succumb to death, but he'd come to the realization that he would rather lose his life than give his powers to the son of those who imprisoned him. He had been a captive of the Shadaime's wife Uzumaki Mito, then Uzumaki Kushina. But the final insult was sealing the great Kyuubi into a newborn child. His pride wounded beyond reconciliation. As such he withheld the special element of his power. The healing cloak. The one thing which could overpower the poison currently plaguing the young Uzumaki's life. After a few more hours of self-pity and roaring wildly, the fox finally calmed and laid once again on the cold floor of his cage, content in the knowledge that his suffering would soon be over. This short-lived peace wasn't meant to last, however, as the fox heard a thunderous roar above him. He stood up in his cage, eyes sharp as he glanced upwards, not in fear, but merely curious as to who would be brave or foolish enough to disturb the great fox. The Kyuubi looked outside his cage and saw a large glowing green silhouette covered in orange circled in the air of the blackness, sightless of the massive room descended upon his temporary home. At the large creature's touching of the ground, the Kyuubi found himself thrown back in his cage. The force of power far exceeding expectations. While the Kyuubi accepted the fact that he was to die soon, he had no doubts that this being in front of him could make dying peacefully quite troublesome. Its massive size dwarfed his own, but that did not faze the nine-tailed beast in the slightest. That was until the dustless room's fog cleared, and the green figure became more prominent, armor and all. The large-scaled beast walked forward and became smaller and smaller with each step, and body reformed into that of a petite young woman who looked to be in her early 20s. Upon his clear clarification, the Kyuubi immediately stood in his cage and bowed respectfully, "Ryu Kami-sama." The woman was no more than 5 feet tall, her flowing white gown accented by her green diamond-encrusted flat-heeled shoes. Her shoulder-length crimson hair flowed wildly around her face, yet her wise, intelligent jade eyes peered into his very soul. "Celeste will be fine," the small, shapely woman offered kindly. "I know of you as I have watched your family's curse since Hagoromo Otsutsuki separated you from your siblings so long ago. He and I have had some interesting talks since his passing." That last part hit the Kyuubi hardest as he fought to speak. "Does that mean you are here to lead the boy to the ever after?" "No, dear Kurama. It's not quite his time yet," she said, her voice even more kind as she slipped past the gate which held him, and rubbed his snout lovingly. "I am here because I am slightly disappointed in you. I can see the shock in your eyes, but yes, I know your actual name too. She laughed a bit, then turned a bit more serious. A coldness in her eyes that wasn't there before. How do you know of me, Kurama? All chakra spirits and sages know of at least the legend of you. I felt your power as you descended, and although you kept your powers minimal, likely to keep the boy's healers from detecting something off, I knew it was something quite celestial about it. A far step from chakra. Had you released more power, I would have likely been forced to the ground, mistress, he reluctantly admitted. Good to see you know who and what you are dealing with. So this should make this encounter go by a bit faster. Kurama. Kyuubi no Yoko of the village hidden in the leaves. You are to be judged, she confirmed sadly. The Kyuubi now known as Kurama stunned asked, what have I to be judged for? I was captured by Hashirama of the Senju clan nearly 60 years ago, shoved into his wife, forced to stay sealed in her until she was ready to pass on. Then, no sooner than I thought I might get my freedom, I was forced into this brat's mother. And then finally, to add insult to injury, they placed me in a child at birth. He snapped. Celeste's eyes flashed purple in a bit of anger, and Kurama took a deep breath and reined in his temper. He remembered very quickly that with a word, he would be obliterated, and not reformed in the afterlife, reunited with his father. Please forgive my temper, Celeste Ryukami-sama. I have just been imprisoned for so long, I forgot myself for a moment. Celeste, who already knew of all Kurama's torments and suffering, could not let his greatest sin go unpunished. While she cared about Kurama, someone under her purview, she would not allow an innocent child to die because of his prisoner's past. You are allowing an innocent child to die due to the actions of others which he had no control over. Kurama eyed the young-looking goddess with a wary glance and noted, I was controlled when Konoha was attacked to try to gain my power by an Uchiha. Maybe it'd be better if I were to die anyway. I have no place in this world. At least no place to make me happy, his deep voice conveyed. Celeste again took in this information for what seemed like 100th time and asked, so you have nothing against the child himself? No, my lady. Only the predicament surrounding him. And the only problem I have with him personally is that he is my jailer. I have not tried to make contact, though I considered trying to take control of him when he was attacked a few days ago, as I felt my life was in danger. That was when everything changed. Kurama's fur bristled at the awkward silence that followed his admission. Celeste waved her hand to the open air and appeared back outside the cage which kept the mighty Nine-Tails captive. Celeste sat in a comfortable-looking chair which appeared at her glance and with a sad expression warned, you had the power to save an innocent child, one whose very life is intertwined with your own, and you were still willing to let him die to set yourself free. It was selfish and unworthy of the trust your father placed upon you. She chided sharply, which tore at the beast's heart, and he started releasing small bits of his healing chakra in an effort to hide it from his deity's view. Kurama was surprised when his powers stopped working and looked to the dragon goddess Celeste. Celeste saw his actions and decided that it made her happy that the beast's heart was not completely stone. As such, she offered him a chance, her voice still cold. I have stopped your flow of chakra to the child as I noticed your attempt. You did well in attempting to rectify your mistake, but had I not arrived, you would have let this boy die. As such, you will wait and see if he survives with the help of outside assistance. I can detect great signs of relief outside the boy. The one, I believe her name was Tsunade, must be near. In here my senses are not quite so clear. But I digress. Should the boy survive, I will introduce you to him. You will plead your case to him and he will decide if you are to be given another chance, or sent into oblivion. Let us see if my hunch for this child is right. At the front gates of Konoha, the two Chunin-level shinobi that guarded the entrance stood from their seats in awe as Senju Tsunade's visage could be seen slowing down to enter the checkpoint. Kakashi bit his finger and dropped a blood sample on the special chakra paper which verified his identity. The others followed suit. The two at the gate were so awed, they could only bow in reverence. Soon as the group was past the gate, Tsunade whispered to Jiraiya, "What's with all the spit and shine, Jiraiya? Your perverted excuse for a novel can't be that great, can it?" She deadpanned. Jiraiya curled his lip in mock indignation and said, "It just so happens both of my newer books are masterpieces. And are on the Shinobi World's bestseller list for a fourth month in a row." Then his face took on a more serious tone as he said, "They are looking at you. You are one of the legendary Sannin after all, and you haven't been home in over 9 years." Tsunade was about to object when she saw people bowing in reverence as she took in the majesty of her old home village. Its beautiful landscapes, and she took in a deep breath and looked at the medical center. She wasn't happy to be home, but she turned on her clinical mode, mostly, and walked up the steps to meet the Sandaime as he walked out of the glass doors to meet her. Faster than the eye could see, she punched her old sensei back through the doors before they could slide open, and he flew back nearly 40 feet. 20 Anbu appeared. 3 which caught the Sandaime, the others, Wolf, Crow, and Raven, included, surrounded Tsunade. Hiruzen checked and found only a few broken ribs and said, "You are lucky you are so needed right now, Tsunade. This will not go unpunished," his old voice chillingly warned. Tsunade's voice, equally cold, replied, "We are leaving the village after this is done. Send another S-class crew of shinobi after us again, and I won't hold back next time. I warned you and the council to improve the medical training for years so you wouldn't have to depend on me so much. You should have listened. Now tell your band of misfits to move and show me to my patients, old man." The Hokage growled at his old student's blatant disrespect, but could not deny she had a point. He gave a small nod and the small army's swords were put away, and most again vanished. Shizune walked over and bowed respectfully to the Hokage, who barely remembered her, but remember her he did. "Hello, Shizune. At least you still have some manners," Hiruzen noted through the pain. Shizune giggled slightly at the older man's comment, but stifled them upon seeing the glare of her master. She then offered, "If I may, Hokage-sama, I can heal you if you'd like." The Hokage didn't know whether to trust this untested medic, or untested in Konoha, but that whole thought process was silenced at Tsunade's scoff. She could have handled this whole mess. As a matter of fact, next time she wants to visit home, she can deal with this and the paperwork too. Hiruzen, a few of his guards along with Shizune, stopped in the room beside Uzumaki Naruto's. Across from his was that of Uchiha Sasuke, who too was hurt in his abduction attempt by Shimura Danzo before his execution. Hiruzen was helped back and lain on his back. Shizune began his examination and surgically repaired his bones with her Shozen Jutsu. After explaining that he would need to rest for a day or two, Itachi grasped Shizune's arm gently as she exited the examination room, and asked, "Please, Shizune-sensei, look in on my brother. Tsunade-sama assurances tell me that you are more than capable." Shizune looked to the Hokage, who tilted his head in assent. They walked to the next room and Shizune noted that the raven-haired boy's body was covered in burns. Third-degree burns from what looked to be an explosion. Itachi's Sharingan was active so that he could follow the procedure. Shizune considered shooing Itachi out, but decided against it, remembering the fight that ensued due to her Shisho's brash words about Sasuke earlier, which led to the unnecessary battle. This time Shizune transferred into her scrubs after a quick wash-up behind the privacy curtain. Like with Hiruzen, she used hypoallergenic hand soap and scrubbed her body of contaminants and placed on hypoallergenic gloves as well. She activated the hand seals for the Shozen no Jutsu and ran her hand across the red-skinned miner. As the medic diagnosed further, her eyes widened as realization hit her and she shoved Itachi out of the way. Shizune started pumping Sasuke's chest methodically. His heart rate slowed further and further despite her best efforts. Itachi's eyes locked onto Sasuke's weakening heartbeat and until it finally stopped. Normally, now would be when the doctor called for time of death. Itachi, filled with despair, screamed out, "No. Sasuke. Shizune, remembering something of an experiment she tried a few years back, shook off the shock of the tears of blood coming from Itachi's eyes. She then remembered something important as Anbu, who stood at the now open door. Kakashi. You're needed now. Kakashi appeared and walked over to Itachi to remove him, but was stopped. No time to deal with a grieving older brother. If I'm not mistaken, you were Lightning Element, right? While he didn't like his name called out while he was in Anbu gear, it wasn't a big deal anyway, as he was famous in his own right. But revealing his primary element was a bit of an annoyance to the silver-haired man. But he nodded slightly and was pulled over to where Sasuke's heart was and ordered, "Please add a little lightning chakra to your right hand." Enough to say give a small jolt, but no actual damage. As Kakashi practiced with such an affinity for many years, this was nearly child's play. He did as he was instructed 3 times, with no result. Shizune was ready to call it quits when she had him give it one more slightly more powerful burst. Sasuke gasped for air, then lost consciousness again, but was stabilizing. Itachi's head arose with a hope he dared not embrace. Shizune jumped up and hugged Kakashi and released him as he shook his head. Other doctors who managed to arrive at the doorway to see what was going on noted the Hitaki Kato method. Or the Kato Hitaki method. No, it was Shizune's technique that saved Sasuke's life. It should be the Kato Shizune method, or whatever she calls it. Kakashi humbly bowed out as to give the young doctor her due. Itachi watched as Shizune began healing his brother's burns again. 40 minutes later, Sasuke was all but burn-free. His heart rate was back to normal, and Shizune nearly fainted from chakra exhaustion. Itachi raced back to the side of the bed she was standing on, and caught her one-handed. She allowed a small appreciative smile. As she, Itachi, and Sasuke were the only ones left in the room, Shizune finally spoke up. "I'd like to examine your eyes. I know you cleaned them up, but eyes should not bleed. Even Uchiha Sharingan should not have done that." Itachi knelt before Shizune, and stated, "The Uchiha have always been extremely private, and secretive about our dojutsu. As you have saved the life of my younger brother, my life is yours, Shizune-sama. Sasuke is the last of my immediate family alive. As long as your will does not come endanger the village, I will always watch over you," he said as if it were nothing more than a casual conversation. Shizune blushed slightly at his proclamation. Itachi was reluctant still to show his eyes in detail, but looked up to her with his Sharingan still active. While a little shocked, she did not react as she noted a star-shaped iris rather than the normal 3-tomo which surrounded the red, which normally replaced the black when the Sharingan activated. "I don't know whether to congratulate you or not, considering the circumstances." Itachi stood and stepped behind Shizune to cabinet with the mirror on it and stood in shock. After a moment he stated, "To think that I would receive this, and still have my brother. Perhaps I owe you more than my life, Shizune-heim," he amended. She was now his princess, and he her devoted servant, even if she didn't know that yet. Shisui knocked on the door and came in at Itachi's nod. With his head down, Itachi stated, "Sasuke is alive and it was unlocked." Shisui, already knowing what Itachi spoke of, gasped slightly. "Looks like Konoha's Uchiha legacy lives on in us boys," he stated as he looked at Sasuke. "We will have to train the little pipsqueak up good and strong. And keep the fact that he almost died out of the local news. He does not need the headache of fangirls." Itachi could only grin at his best friend's antics despite the horror of what recently happened to their clan. It was obviously a coping mechanism for them both, but one they were willing to accept until they could fully bury those emotions with their Anbu training. Less than 2 rooms over, Tsunade stood side by side with her sensei, the Sandaime Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen, as she drew another vial of what appeared to be a self-replicating virus out of Naruto's system. By all accounts, Naruto's expectancy should have only been 48 hours, much less the 5 days total it took to find Tsunade, convince her to come home, and the return trip. A young medic aide with silver hair cleaned himself up and walked into the room. None of the doctors dared offer to assist for fear of offending Tsunade. She was too focused on saving her patient to really notice. The aide went and placed water in 2 new hospital mugs, and put on hypoallergenic gloves as he didn't quite know the patient's allergies. He noticed the heavy perspiration falling from Tsunade's forehead and grabbed a few paper towels and slowly moved his hand towards her head. She caught on and let him wipe quickly. Then he offered her ice water. She considered declining, but realized just how much fluid she had lost during the procedure. The silver-haired boy stayed by her side in silence and occasionally offered drink, or paper towel. It made her job a little less stressful, and she'd taken note of the young man's calm under pressure and decided to keep that in mind if she were to make recommendations for higher-level training. Naruto's form started to convulse. Tsunade, aware of the major procedure Shizune just performed, called out, "Shizune, I need you to take a soldier pill. My patient is convulsing with rapid heart palpitations. I need you for an assist." Within a moment, Shizune was already washed off, and new smock and gloves in place. Sorry to call the new reigning medical hero back to action right after her victory, but that's the life of a doctor, Tsunade warned. Shizune only nodded as the quiet medic aide finally spoke up to the remaining medics at the doorway. Either someone come in and wipe Shizune-senpai's forehead and bring her water, or clear the way for someone who will. Watch it, Genin. One of the doctors chided, but was immediately stopped by a dark glare from Tsunade. I believe you were just given an order by my assistant. Now move. Said doctor moved, and another young aide arrived and bravely assisted Shizune as best she could in the tense room as young Naruto's very life hung in the balance. Naruto's condition was too grave to move him into the surgical bay, and synthesizing an antidote seemed unlikely in the time they had left. The boy's skin was starting to shed, and the discoloring started to occur. But that was not the only thing amiss in the village hidden in the leaves. The woman who attempted to kill Naruto found her finger twitch. A sensation she should not have felt, as she should be dead. Her head throbbed and she felt extraordinarily weak. As her eyes opened, she gazed upon the face of a medic who healed her restrained body, and on the other side, she noted a familiar face. She smiled sadly as she stated, I know what I did, but was not in control. I am ready for whatever punishment Hokage-sama commands. You will get no resistance from me, she offered. Well, damn, I was hoping you'd offer some kind of resistance. It would have made my day so much more fun, the bald scar-faced man retorted in the dark, dirty, metal-filled room. An assassin awakened, her body immobilized, her thoughts on the young boy she was forced to try to kill. The would-be assassin looked into the man's cold eyes who stood directly in front of her and whispered, the traitorous snake used his power over this cursed seal to compel my hand. For the 4th time, the kunoichi of Konoha explained what occurred when she attacked Konoha's Jinchuriki. She offered no resistance, nor did she fight the Yamanaka mind-walking techniques to aid in the finding of the truth. The Sandaime was furious beyond words. He didn't understand many things his former student did, but trying to assassinate a child was the last straw. Sarutobi turned back to his former student's puppet, but was surprised when she spoke first, finally 100% cognizant. The antidote to the poison is in my home under the bow staff display in my bedroom. Someone please hurry and get it to the child's attending doctor before it's too late. I am already on Lady Tsunade's bad side from an event years past. And I'm already on a lot of people's shit list. Please inform her it's the root of Konohakiriko, and aloe vera. She will know where to go from there. She screamed when she realized it had been days under lock and key with no signs of daylight since the poison took effect, and Naruto was still alive. And there was a chance he could survive. After getting a hesitant nod from the Hokage, the would-be assassin continued, please ask Jiraiya-sama to try to remove this command seal. Or to add a much stronger suppression seal. The current seal added by Kakashi, Senpai just isn't strong enough. I know he is strong, but I can feel the dirty snake bastard trying even now to get his vice grip back into my mind. I don't want to give up my life, nor give up being a shinobi of Konoha. Should you choose to strip me of my rank and throw me in jail, or even execute me, I accept it without question. But as a current shinobi of Konoha, I want to make sure there is no way I can hurt another citizen of our beautiful city. Hiruzen's cold eyes softened slightly at the young woman's words. He learned long ago to differentiate a plea for mercy from a truly repentant individual. She was the latter, and as such he said, "Bring me Jiraiya." He didn't speak to anyone specifically, but feet started shuffling to accommodate his order. Moments later, the tall white-haired man arrived and faced his sensei with equally serious looks as he asked, "Are the rumors true? The woman who tried to kill Naruto is alive?" "Yes. Your former teammate is the cause of the pain Naruto-kun has had to endure as he set up the trade for Suna poisons, and whatnot. It was Homura, Kaharu and Danzo who went into business with a snake. But do not take it out on the girl. I have had Inoichi and Ibiki working on her all day. She had no control over what she did. It was another seal that forced the young lady to act the way she did. It was activated off of a timer of some sort," the Sandame advised. Jiraiya was not happy. He wanted to shove a Rasengan down her throat for harming his student's child. He turned and looked at the heartbroken face of the young woman whose eyes shared in his hurt. It did not calm him, but transferred some of his rage to its rightful target. Orochimaru. Back at the hospital, Naruto's body laid perfectly still as Shizune purified Naruto's blood and Tsunade replaced in his body. Two Anbu arrived, one bowed and handed Tsunade the little green vial and said, "The poisoner survived and revealed she was under duress when she attempted to harm Uzumaki Naruto. This is the cure. Root of Konohakiriko, and aloe vera." Cut off before he could say any more. "Why didn't you say so, you moron?" Tsunade, annoyed, ran a glowing hand over the vial. Once she confirmed its base ingredients, she opened it and took a small whiff in. "Only 3 people are known for this poison. One of them my former teammate. Death by 1,000 poisons," she said worriedly. Tsunade took a deep breath and debated whether Naruto would gain anything by taking the antidote now. She looked at her co-doctor who nodded the affirmative. Tsunade dispensed the medicine and looked to Shizune and instructed, "His body is still burning up. We need to get him into an ice bath ASAP." The silver-haired boy, who worked at the hospital as an aide, vanished and reappeared with a child-sized tub, and the girl who assisted Shizune ran off as well. As the silver-haired boy adjusted his glasses and prepared for the next phase as he poured 2 gallons of water into the tub, the black-haired girl with the red face markings arrived with 6 bags of ice. They filled up the bucket. Tsunade and Shizune looked on, impressed and proud of what the 2 young med nins in training accomplished in what appeared to be mere seconds. Tsunade and Shizune, along with a few surgical doctors who were previously standing at the door, gently moved Naruto down into the ice bath. His body was red from the heat. Tsunade looked to her silver-haired aide and asked, "What's your name, boy?" Yukushi Kabuto Sanin-sama. "What do we do now, my lady?" Shizune asked. "We've done as much as we can. If you're the praying sort," Tsunade said to those gathered around, "now's the time to see if someone up there is listening," she sighed. Naruto's mindscape. Kurama looked on patiently as the ancient goddess held his gaze. It was not fear Kurama felt, but a longing to be free from what seemed to be his eternal damnation. His continued prison sentence. But he no longer blamed the child for things beyond his control. He just hoped Uzumaki Naruto truly was someone special. Celeste. Eyes focused, and she smiled slightly and said to the great fox, "Naruto will be fine. He has people who are very talented in the medical arts looking after him." Kurama only nodded. He knew what was to come next. Celeste waved her hand out again, and a small form appeared on the ground, peaceful and at rest. "Wake up, my little hero," Celeste prompted gently as she caressed his small whiskered face. Little Naruto stretched and opened his eyes. Celeste, remembering how large and scary Kurama was, opted to give the fox a chance. She took the moment, Naruto mentally stretching to silently minimize the size of the fox. By the time Naruto's eyes cleared, he saw the most beautiful woman he had ever seen sitting over him. As Naruto looked around, he noted he was in a place he saw in his dreams sometimes, thus he assumed this was just another dream. The first thing Naruto could verbalize when he found any words was, beautiful. The goddess, being millennium in age, she was quite flattered, and allowed a small smile to adorn her youthful-looking face as she muttered, "Oh, I definitely like this child." Celeste knelt beside Naruto and looked deep into his innocent blue eyes. With a final push of determination, she decided to take a chance and take a leap of faith on this seemingly random child. Celeste took a deep breath and gently released the piled-up nervous energy which threatened to spill over. She knew that there was a chance Kurama would fail his test, and lose his life. She did not want that, but there must be consequences for those under her protection if they did indescribably wrong, and allowing an innocent child to die was wrong. My little hero, my name is Celeste. Do you remember anything that has happened over the last few weeks? Naruto squinted his eyes for a moment, then blurted out, that drunk bastard attacked me. Said something about me being a demon and kept using shinobi jutsu on me and then bashed my head in. I managed to whistle out a tune old man Hokage gave me and within seconds I found myself here. But by the look on your face, it's been more than a few seconds, little Naruto surmised. Oh, how smart you are, little Naruto-kun, the goddess smiled with a gentleness Naruto was not used to. It made him nervous, and even more cautious. This did not go unnoticed by Celeste, whose features took on a more sad and contemplative look. Naruto looked around, then back at Celeste and realized she was glowing. A brilliance amazingly bright, yet not blinding. He found himself kneeling before her clumsily, but asked anyway, Kami-sama. Am I dead? His question caught her off guard, but then she did something unexpected, she laughed. Not a horrible or horrifying laugh, but a laugh so beautiful, birds would stop singing to listen to its melodious sound, Naruto thought shyly. Her green eyes met his blues and asked, why would you think me a kami, and why do you think you're dead? Well, I have never seen such beauty before in my life. The only one close to as beautiful as Ayame Ne-chan. You have to be someone very powerful and special, Naruto confirmed for her. As for why I am dead, I'm meeting with you, so I must be dead, right? And are my parents here? I hope they aren't dead. I hope they are somewhere happy. Maybe they lost me and I was lucky, and taken in by the hidden leaf. He asked sadly. His soft-spoken words broke the goddess's heart, but she held back her tears. She stood away from Naruto and said, you are not dead, my little one, but you're close to it. Tsunade of Konoha's Grade 3, one of the world's best medical ninjas, was brought in by the Sandaime Hokage to save you. He sent his Anbu far to bring her home just for you. Hearing this, Naruto's eyes began to water. He didn't think the old man cared that much for him. Just showed him pity like a few others. He felt another warmth overtake him as his smile widened and his tears freely flowed. Celeste was again crestfallen by this, but made happy in the same moment. After a while Naruto looked again to the bright lady, but before he could ask again, she answered, and I am not the kami, but a lower level kami. You know of the great kami, and his brother the Shinigami. I am the Shinigami's daughter. At this revelation, Naruto froze from terror, but after a moment relaxed a little, as she had not hurt him and said it was not quite his time yet. Celeste stayed quiet as to not overwhelm the mind and spirit of the child. After a time she asked, before we discuss your parents, would you like to know why the villagers ignore you, and sometimes treat you a little unfairly? Naruto's body perked up at the realization that someone would finally explain things to him. Celeste sat in the chair she called forth and placed Naruto on her lap, and she told him the story The Great Fox. Upon finishing her massive tale, Naruto's eyes were flooded with tears of frustration and sadness. He understood why he was hated, but he wished he could make them understand. Celeste knew that she needed to take the next step sooner rather than later. She pulled the young boy into her bosom, and said, "The fox has the power to save you, love, but would have preferred to die rather than be trapped again in another person, as he has already been entrapped for nearly 60 years. Naruto wiped his nose on his sleeve and his tears came to a slow halt as he said, "I guess I'd be a little grumpy too if I was stuck inside a place with no freedom. Even here in Konoha, I have some freedoms, even though I get those dirty looks." Celeste again gave a small smile at his innocence and asked, "I think now would be a good time to meet, dat mean old F wax, don't you?" Said in a way which made Naruto blurt out a small laugh despite his fear of meeting the evil Kyuubi. Naruto nodded and looked at the area Celeste gazed. The caged wall appeared, and a fairly minuscule fox laid there in silence, sadness evident in his eyes. Naruto got off of Celeste's knee and walked over to the cage. Kurama didn't do or say anything. But Naruto did the unexpected. His spirit self climbed into the cage with his detainee. Celeste went to call out for Naruto as her maternal instincts kicked in, but she held back that urge. Kurama raised an eyebrow as Naruto pointed at the fox and yelled, "You're the one making people be mean to me, you damn fox. Why? What did I ever do to you, you overgrown plushie? I'm just a kid." Naruto ended up whining the last part. Celeste had to place her hands over her mouth to keep from laughing out loud at the little outburst. She just wanted to squeeze his little cheeks and yell out, "Kawaii." But she was able to contain herself, barely. The furs on the back of Kurama's minuscule back stood up as he fought back a growl of annoyance. He then said with a deceptively calm voice, "You do realize the only reason I haven't eaten you is because Celeste-sama would not be pleased. Be wary of your words to me, Gaki." Having nearly forgotten already that his fate essentially laid in Naruto's hands, the fox spirit threatened his young warden. Naruto crossed his arms, waited a moment, then sat down cross-legged on the floor and asked Kurama, "Okay, I haven't given you a chance. I don't know you, so why don't you tell me why you are stuck inside of me, and maybe we can figure out a way to make both of our lives easier, huh?" Kurama noted with each sentence. Naruto's knowledge and wisdom seemed to increase. His vocabulary did the same. As Kurama looked up to a green gem on her dress, she grimaced as she noted it was slightly glowing. Celeste gave the mental command for the light to diminish, but the damage was done. While she could erase Naruto's memories of the events up till now, she opted to see how things played out first. Kurama looked to Naruto carefully and gently as his deep voice could explain, "I was broken apart from one large being called the Jaibi along with my siblings. The Ikibi Shukaku through Hachibi, Yuki. We were separated from each other by that damned Senju Hashirama Senju, and Uchiha Madara. I was then sealed into Uzumaki Mito, the Shodai's wife, then another Uzumaki the same way I was sealed into you. But 7 years ago, a very bad man ripped me out of her and used his bad eye powers to take over my mind, and force me to do bad things in Konoha. Eye powers?" Naruto thought carefully. "You mean dojutsu, like those arrogant Hyuga bastards and their white X-ray-like eyes?" Kurama replied with a surprised, yet stoic nod. "Well, I was forced to kill a great many people here in this village even though I didn't want to. To save the village, the Yondaime Hokage had no choice but to seal the threat, me away. I was too strong to be killed. Not to mention I did not want to live any further, thus I did not help you heal after the attempt on taking your life kit." Ignoring the fact that Kurama almost let him die, and that he called him a kit, a pup of some kind, but didn't know how he knew that, "So he sealed you away inside of me. The reason people call me a demon is because you are sealed inside of me. But that can't be right. I can't be a demon. I am here, separate from you. I just hold you right. Like a bowl of ramen holding the ramen. The bowl is not the ramen, though it would awesome if it was. Ramen inside of a bowl made of more ramen ingredients inside of beef, pork, chicken and seafood wraps. Ooh, I'm getting hungry now. Celeste smiled. Her face betrayed her pride at how wise Naruto had grown, and lost herself in a small giggle despite it being a slip-up on her part. This went on for a few minutes until Naruto finally remembered what he wanted to ask, and ask he did. He inquired about why he was sealed and who the fourth Hokage thought he was and what gave him the right to force this burden. Naruto froze when he saw a knowing face on Celeste and realized as he asked, that Sab was my father. The Yondaime. Celeste wanted to laugh, but instead gave Naruto a chastising glare to which the 7-year-old immediately grew quiet. Though amusing, it seemed that this little one needed some lessons in manners. She nodded to Naruto and Kurama to continue their discussion. Naruto carefully said, I guess it's not your fault that you are sealed in me. Neither of us asked for this. I'm so sorry you were imprisoned, Naruto said as tears freely flowed. Naruto's words touched the cold heart of the Kyuubi no Yoko as he replied, I am sorry I have caused you such turmoil. I am an old soul, and will not change overnight, but I am willing to try to work with you if you are willing to forgive me. I am set in my ways, and the darkness in my heart will take time to heal, but heal it shall with your help. Otherwise, I shall ask Celeste-sama to remove my consciousness, but allow you to keep all of my powers. That is my promise to you Uzumaki Naruto. Without wasting a moment, Naruto walked over to the slightly larger than human-sized fox and held out his fist. The fox nudged his closed paw against Naruto's resulting in a fist bump. Naruto stepped outside of the cage with a content smile. Kurama began to grow to his normal size again, but with a much calmer aura about him. Naruto walked back over to Celeste who waited patiently for him. As he made his way to her, his face scrunched up into one of a boy about to be drowned by sadness. Celeste wrapped Naruto in her arms and said, I know you want to know more about your parents, but are you sure you are ready Naruto? I might be better if you wait until you are a little older, and a little wiser. Naruto shook his head. This was the first time he would have some closure. He had a feeling that all of this was just an elaborate dream, but he would ride it out as long as he could before being forced back into the hell that was his world. Full of living nightmares, the hateful stares, and the occasional drunk who slapped him around. What Naruto didn't realize was that Celeste heard his concerns and touched a finger to his heart. It glowed red for but a second before she explained. That dear boy is proof of life. Proof that none of what has happened here is a dream. And behold, Celeste called forth a mirror out of the very shadows which showed Naruto in an ice bath with doctors and now Hiruzen around him, gripping the counter behind him. Naruto's tears freely flowed. Not tears of anguish, but of joy. He was even allowed to hear a little of what was said. He hated that the old man hid things from him, and wanted to hate him for it, but he could not after hearing that the old man sent 4 of his best shinobi after what he figured was a monster who had the power to heal him. Gigi, Naruto said silently. The old man perked up as he saw Naruto's hand move. Naruto's semi-subconscious woke him just enough to say, his eyes still sealed shut, I know what you did for me old man. I will rejoin you soon. I can't die yet anyway. I want that hat. Naruto's soft voice stated. The old man looked to Tsunade who only shook her head in amazement that the young child had enough strength in that freezing water to say anything without stuttering badly despite his fever only slightly letting up. You know what Naruto? I might just give you this hat if you prove to be as strong as I think you are. One day, the old man replied with a small tear. Naruto smiled as his mind rested and he was fully back at Celeste's side. Naruto looked at his savior again and asked, so yeah, about my parents. He slyly tried. Celeste nodded and started, I had a chat with your parents. One in paradise, the other who serves my father now, the Shinigami. But have no fear. They are allowed to occasionally see each other. This is the story of a love between two great warriors. 1. A beautiful red-haired girl from Uzugakure no Sato, the village hidden by whirlpools. The other, the handsome golden-haired boy of Kanahagakure no Sato, and how the two were not really that close. The girl even considered him weak and unworthy of her time when she first arrived in Konoha. But that was only the beginning. My mom was from another village. Naruto asked excitedly. That she was Little Prince. She was to be the heir to the Uzumaki clan, the ruling body of Uzu before its fall, she explained sadly. Flashback. Nearly 20 years passed. Konoha Shinobi Academy. This is Uzumaki Kushina. She's new here. She hails from Uzu no Kuni, an ally to the leaf. Many of you may have wondered why we have the spiral on the back of the Chunin and Jonin vest. That spiral is the symbol of our unbreakable bond with Uzushigakure no Sato, the instructor informed the attentive children. Kushina stepped forward and bowed as she introduced herself. Greetings. I am Uzumaki Kushina. As you all have heard, I am from Uzu no Kuni. I am honored to be here and hope we can all be friends, she said with a nervous smile. And I am going to be the first female Hokage, she proclaimed with an even bigger smile. That smile turned murderous when comments immediately started flying about concerning her bright red hair, round face, and how it didn't look natural. Tomato, they called her. Kushina lashed out with impressive speed and struck the four mouthy boys who made fun of her. The instructor immediately took control again as he gripped Kushina's shoulder and quieted the class down as he didn't want the new girl's loud proclamation and fiery temper to get her hurt due to being ganged up on. He also understood that kids could be cruel, but did not want to interfere as it wouldn't do well to have a potential future shinobi so dependent on others to handle their battles for them. This nameless instructor only shook his head and silently wished her luck as she sat down beside the blonde quiet kid. A few months later, Kushina, due to her red hair dancing around and her explosive temper, was nicknamed the Red Hot-Blooded Habanero by her peers. But she accepted it as it was the first time a name was used in reverence to her fighting spirit than her then rounded face. Her fights had nearly completely ended with her peers save one or two. One day Kushina had beaten up one of her classmates pretty badly. So much so that his parents sent their elder son, who was a genin, to take care of this so-called bully girl. In the woods a few blocks away from the academy, the bullied child brought his brother, who had been a genin for nearly a year, to ambush the helpless little redhead who would dare to attack his little brother. The genin knocked Kushina to the ground and said, "How do you like getting pushed around? And what are you going to do against me? I've already been a genin for almost a year. I don't see what my brother was so scared of." Before he could utter another word, Kushina rolled back and pushed herself onto her feet. She danced around every punch or kick the genin threw. She then leapt forward to kick said genin. He ducked, but that was not the best idea. Kushina landed and performed a back kick. Once that first hit landed, the next thing the genin remembered was seeing his younger brother on the ground next to him as Kushina leaned down to his trembling body and said, "Genin, please. You need remedial courses. I'm still new. You should have gotten your facts straight first time. I never started he fights with your brother. But know this. I sure as hell finished them, Databane." Word spread quickly how some kids who approached near the end of the fight stayed out of the fight and out of sight as to avoid getting drawn into such a dangerous situation. But the red-hot-blooded habanero was no one to underestimate. That was the fighting spirit of your mother Naruto, Celeste explained, and unknown to Naruto, what he thought he was imagining were the actual events the way they occurred thanks to a little mystical assistance. "My mom was a bad," Naruto squealed, but quickly quieted back down to finish hearing the story. Konoha. Shortly after Kushina graduated the academy, she was kidnapped by Kumogakure shinobi due to her unique chakra and a special ability which allowed her control over aspects of a biju-tailed beast. As Kushina regained consciousness and saw the speed her captives traveled through the woods, She wisely remained quiet and as motionless as possible lest she make her captives aware. She knew they didn't have much hope of escaping with the sedative they used on her still in her bloodstream. She did the only thing she could. She began pulling out her most defining feature. Her scarlet hair. She panicked inside and knew that no one would know to look for her, but dropped strand by strand regardless. What she did not know, however, was that there was someone in Konoha who sensed her disappearance from the village. Another genin like her. Someone she considered weak and a slacker. He didn't wait to report the situation. It was time sensitive and the young man blazed through the forest with an urgency like no other. Shortly after his departure he found a single strand of the scarlet hair that he admitted only to himself he was so fond of. Please be all right, Kushina, the young man of 12 pleaded silently. He began to see more and more strands of her hair until he saw the three and Kushina over one of the Kumo's shoulders. Kushina kept her senses passively open and aware and was the first person to detect the blonde shinobi who gave her the signal to remain silent. She did. Like a flash, the young man raced in and used a single kunai to slice open the first man's neck who held Kushina. He caught her, and continued his attack. His speed was unreal as he sliced his enemy's stroke by bloody stroke. He kept Kushina's head turned toward his chest and ran as quickly as he could to get some distance before Kumo reinforcements arrived. Kushina's hero stopped for a momentary reprieve and allowed her to reclaim her footing. She looked into his eyes. No longer the weak boy did she see, but a man. Her gaze holding his, she asked, "How?" "I followed your beautiful red hair," he admitted freely. She tried to fight back the tears that were formed in her eyes. Her knees weakened and her bottom lip trembled before she jumped on him, pushing him to the ground and giving the surprised young blonde genin the kiss of his life. Before he could ask her why, she answered, "No one has ever complimented me on my hair before." "And so that is how your mother met your father, Naruto," Celeste boomed for effect, which caused the little one to laugh slightly. Celeste said, "It's almost time for you to get back to the ones who love you." "I already saw the old man." "You mean there's more?" Naruto asked excitedly. "I sensed 2 more people arrive with something called ramen, I think." "Your body is refusing to stay asleep for us to finish talking." "The food was made with love. Lots of it. I can feel it like waves even here inside of you. Oji Santuki and Ayame Ne-chan." Naruto bellowed. "Kami-sama?" Naruto asked with a touch of worry. "I saw me in a tub of ice. Is there any way I don't have to wake up freezing, and half dead?" "I will help you with that, Naruto. You have nothing to concern yourself with there, but how did you know to ask such a question?" She pondered, already knowing the answer. "After seeing that glowing gem on your dress shine whatever that was on me, I gained knowledge and wisdom, which is part of the reason I want to give the fur ball a chance. It wasn't his fault we were forced into these circumstances. Okay. I have a wisdom of the ages, but I am not omniscient like the elder generation of Celestials. But I do okay, I guess. I just wanted to make sure I didn't damage you or force you to grow up to far too fast." After a moment of thought, Naruto said, "I believe I have a mind of a 10 or 11-year-old. I can deal with that. It will help me speed up my shinobi training now that I am in the academy." "Shinobi training, huh? Why would you want to do something so violent, Naruto? You know from the Kyuubi's attack that violence only begets more violence. The villagers verbally attack you, or ignore you. The rare ones even physically try to harm you. They try to keep their kids from befriending you. Why join such a corrupt system?" Celeste was curious to know. And while she could hear his thoughts, and get the basics from his emotions, she wanted to hear it from him in a way only he could explain it. "Well, after all of this that has happened, I want to make a change in Konoha. I don't want people to be treated badly because they are a little different. I want the weak to have a chance to stand tall beside the strong. I want to protect those who are not well educated enough to realize the difference between a container and its contents. For those reasons I wish to become the fire that blazes and creates a barrier of protection for my people. I will become their teacher. I will be their Hokage. Believe it. He palmed his face then said, I meant Dadbao. Kurama could be heard cackling in the background. Shut up you damn fox. The fox only laughed slightly louder. Celeste Ryu-sama placed Naruto down off of her lap again and said to Kurama, you and I will discuss your less severe punishment later, but discuss it we shall. Kurama noticed the change in tone immediately and nodded in understanding, even if Naruto didn't completely understand. Naruto, I approve of your wanting to help your village, and maybe you will succeed one day. Perhaps you will change the entirety of the world. But just start with your village, and I will check in on you every few years. I give you this as my promise of 10 lifetimes. Naruto's eyes again began to water as he knew this meant she was leaving soon, but before his first sob arrived, she placed her right hand out to the side and a magnificent long bow materialized along with a quiver filled with arrows before Naruto. He looked to her and she said, have no fear young one. As long as any of those items are near you, part of me will always be at your side even if you can't hear me or see me. Will you accept my gift? Despite himself, he jumped into Celeste's arms with a huge smile and kissed her cheek. Her hardened demeanor again fell apart as she giggled a little and tickled Naruto for a few seconds. She again returned his hug and said, I give up. I guess you can call me Celeste Ne-sama when next you see me. Naruto smiled, and felt himself falling to sleep, unable to fight it off. The bow and arrows vanished into a seal which appeared on Naruto's right arm in the real world. Jiraiya, who just arrived, recognized the seal immediately and paled. He held up his arm to forestall any questions. He walked outside the door and sat in the emptied hallway, cross-legged, and soon summoned his adopted Ma and Pa Toad Sensei Shima and Fukusaku respectively and activated his incomplete sage mode the moment they arrived. Hiruzen, feeling a gigantic spike of power, stepped into the hallway as well. What's wrong Jiraiya-kun? Shima asked her adopted son figure. Ma, I think Lady Celeste has shown herself on Earth after nearly 60 years. I believe Naruto may be the child of prophecy. Look at his arm. A protection seal Sarasuit. The most perfect version of that seal I have ever seen. If she has become Naruto's deity, and we have somehow pissed her off for not being there for him as much as we could have been. The hidden leaf is screwed. Then why did you go into sage mode Jiraiya-kun? You know we can't help you if she is angered. She created the contract system with summons and allowed natural energy to be used by humans. Fukusaku warned. Jiraiya stood, and Hiruzen looked from the doorway between Tsunade, Shizune, Naruto, Jiraiya and the new tattoo and sighed. This was going to be a long night. Elsewhere in the village, hidden in the leaves, coo coo coo, hee hee hee. Two voices chorused from the shadows. Hiruzen had Ichiraku Tsuki and his daughter blindfolded, and brought to Naruto's room as they might have better luck in waking him, but despite the smell of ramen having more of a kick than smelling salts to Naruto, something supernatural was keeping him unconscious for the time being. Tsunade made Ayame and Tsuki take the ramen away from Naruto's room as that was no food for a child who was in recovery anyway. I promise to bring you some tomorrow if you just wake up for me Naruto-kun, Ayame prayed before they were blindfolded again. The Anbu, who, blindfolded, Ayame left just enough room for her to see her way through it should she be so inclined. This Anbu knew of the Ichiraku's closeness with the boy. The two were soon led down to the front repaired doors to the hospital. Shortly thereafter Tsunade and Shizune were left exhausted and were assigned to get some rest in a couple of the spare rooms by the Hokage to recuperate after the long procedure which occurred shortly after Naruto's words to Hiruzen. The room was filled with silence as a new voice was heard which drew the Sandaime and Jiraiya back into the room. Everyone, stand back please. I will be finishing the healing process on Naruto. Then we shall let him sleep. The grown-ups need to talk. Before the Sandaime could question this individual who appeared without him sensing her, Shisui arrived, having left Itachi to look over Sasuke. He stood firm beside his cage. Hiruzen didn't dare intervene. If he snatched Naruto away, he might accidentally kill the boy he just fought so hard to save. As soon as Fukusaku and Shima saw and felt the energy radiating off of the red-haired woman, they knelt in respect. "Hello Fukusaku-chan. It has been quite a long time, hasn't it?" the beautiful woman asked. "You mean you really did meet her? I thought you were full of snot bugs when you told me you met Sarasute-sama." Celeste allowed a small smile as Pa reddened a bit. "That it has, my lady. May I present to you my wife Shima-chan, Jiraiya-chan of Konoha's Legendary 3, and a student of your most honored Gama Senjutsu." Bo Baka. Ma bopped the back of Jiraiya's head and he immediately knelt to one knee. This old-timer beside us is Sarutobi Hiruzen-chan, summoner of Enma of the Great Primate Clan and Hokage, leader of this mighty village. "May I ask why you have honored us with your presence?" "No, I don't care who she is. No one just waltzes into my village without invitation." "Jiraiya, get up," Hiruzen commanded angrily. He almost lost his rule due to Danzo and the two elders Homura and Kaharu. He would not show weakness. Celeste. Eyes flashed purple but for a second before Jiraiya intervened. "Sensei," Jiraiya warned. "I say this out of respect for you and for the safety of the village. Shut the up and let her talk. You might be the professor, but you don't know everything. This is one of them." Celeste is a power that the sage of the six paths respected and knew of her 3 rules. 1. You get 3 chances. 1. You just lost. Her eyes flared and fortunately for us, she is giving us the other 2 chances it seems. This is no genjutsu. I am in sage mode and can sense it. Should she want to, she could wipe the hidden leaf off the map with but a wave of her hand. 2. If you want to lose Enma, then keep talking all that shit. She is the one who controls whether a contract is valid or not. Even if another one is somehow created, all animal summons come under her domain. So she could nullify another one easily as well. 3. You screw up 1 and 2, well, I don't even want to think about that. I had the honor of meeting the Shogunate at one point in my life, and his predecessor was foolish enough to make her angry. That is why the age of war arrived. The ninja clans were split apart and it took Shodai-sama and Uchiha Madara to even begin to rebuild what was once our former world of peace. So sensei, Jiraiya's voice grew deep and deadly, as a shinobi of Konoha, I will step in to stop you if you endanger our village due to your pride. I will step in and kill you myself. Jiraiya's words stung more than he would have ever thought possible. Not since losing his favorite student Orochimaru. Maybe it was nearing time for him to retire the hat, but that was a thought for a later time. He turned to Jiraiya and said, "You are crossing into the territory of treason, Jiraiya." Anticipating his Hokage's command, Shisui vanished in a Shunshin no Jutsu faster than most could see. He sped behind the red-haired woman and attempted to knock her out without actually hurting her. Jiraiya, however, would not have that. He managed, just barely, to flick a tiny sleeping potion Senbon at Shisui. It barely nicked his arm, but nick it did. "No sensei. I am stopping you from doing just that because of a power struggle that doesn't even exist. I don't know why Lady Sarasate is here, but let us hear her out. Show those many years of wearing the hat have given you some wisdom." Not one to show weakness is his new motto. He looked back to Celeste and said, "I don't like my village being used for personal gains, but as one of my students has put in a good word for you, I ask you as an honored guest why you are here." Celeste, who had been stroking Naruto's hair since laying him in bed, stated, "I felt one of my servants do a disservice to this boy." "You know him as the Kyuubi no Yoko," she said firmly. She noted that everyone in the room stiffened at that and she sighed. He did not attack Konoha of his own volition. A Sharingan user managed to entrap his mind. You all have kept him trapped in body after body. 3 Uzumaki now. I considered freeing him to let him take his revenge on this village for such a cruel fate, but his crime to me outweighed yours as a village, barely. Those in the room sweated profusely at the thought of Kurama being released, but calmed slightly at the thought of him still being sealed away, at least for now. I am not sure it is my place, Sarasit-sama, and not that I am complaining, truly, but why is he being kept sealed? Jiraiya asked, secretly glad because he knew his godson would likely die from the extraction process. You show great wisdom in your questions, Jiraiya-chan. You even remember my name in your language, Celeste crooned. To Hiruzen, however, she said, put your pride to the side and you might be rewarded, along with your precious village. Sarutobi, who narrowed his eyes, took her words as a threat and prepared to attack. His mind was old, and despite his disagreements with his former friend, and now dead ex-elder Danzo, they shared more than a few warlike philosophies than either would have admitted. Danzo, because he wanted the hat of the Hokage. Hiruzen, because he could not afford to show weakness to his old friend, lest said hat be wrestled away from him. But more importantly, Celeste warned, I have taken a vested interest in Naruto's future. He will be my champion on the very earth beneath his feet. The very wind he soars through. The very rain that gives life. And shall be the fiery wall that surrounds and protects these broken and fallen leaves of Konoha. And not a cloud in the sky, nor storm upon the seas shall silence my dragon's mighty roar. Celeste allowed her voice to thunder for added dramatic effect. She forced down a small smirk playing upon the edges of her lips. And Naruto not having someone to look over him in a parental capacity is over. If he asks to be adopted by a family and they say yes, and they truly love him, you, Sarutobi, will allow them to adopt him, or then, and only then will I show you how much of a maelstrom your tiny little village really can't handle. The Sandaime found his mind and body felt heavier than it ever had before. He loved Naruto like a grandson, but he couldn't forget that he was also a weapon. A tool to be used to protect the village. The very will of fire. Tsunade, who'd awakened moments before, stopped shortly before entering the room, having only felt something so pure and powerful in her grandfather, and even then, his power was dwarfed compared to what she felt inside Naruto's room. As she felt her sensei, and Jiraiya still in there, and even Fukusaku and Shima, she figured it best to wait in silence and learn. Celeste, along with the others, sensed Tsunade's presence despite her stealth skills, as all shinobi present were in a league far above most nin. Tsunade decided to step carefully into the room after she'd heard enough. That deal was sealed when she felt the nearly minuscule flare of killer intent aimed at the guest. Knock it off, sensei. Tsunade chided as she walked into the room. Not every word someone says should be taken as a threat to Konoha. You're starting to act like that paranoid old war hawk. I know you are on edge after everything that's happened recently, but if this truly is in divine meeting and she is willing to gift Konoha and you with something special to protect Konoha, don't you think it wise to shut the hell up and listen? Tsunade's words were surprisingly cold, yet calm. She herself knelt before Celeste in submission. This pleased Celeste. Celeste then said, Tsunade, you bet against me. I should be offended, but not even I will mess with your gambling curse. You lose. I will not be harming your village, and your heart speaks to me of two loved ones lost. While I cannot, and would not dare go against my father, Yamamoto Shinigami, I can offer you these two things as a boon for your wisdom and hidden leadership skills. The room went quiet, almost as if those present were frozen in time. Tsunade let out a yelp as her ultra-powered henge was released, and her true skin was shown. Tsunade tried not to glare at Celeste, who didn't seem to care either way. But then something amazing happened. Tsunade's skin began to smooth. But it wasn't just a surface repair. Her very cells started to heal. Even her use of her seal of 100s damage to her body was being repaired. Tsunade was allowed to stand, and she looked in the mirror and knew that she was literally in her late teens to early 20s again, yet didn't feel as if she lost a touch of her training or power. Tears began to swell in her eyes. She was getting another chance at life. But Celeste wasn't done yet. Two orbs appeared in front of Tsunade, who accepted them upon a nod from Celeste. These are your spirit orbs. One for your brother Nawaki. The other for your lost lover Dan. These will allow you 4 hours speaking with them. You do not have to use them all at once. Just concentrate on one, and they will appear. But know that after those 4 hours are gone, they cannot be recovered. To end the communication, simply say, "Till we meet again." Tsunade's eyes were red from the downpour of tears. Hiruzen, who was being quite resistant, stopped in realization that this being truly could wipe his village out without a second thought and opted to speak, very carefully, "Please forgive my brash attitude, Celeste-sama. I fear my old age has made me blind when it comes to the protection of my village and loved ones." Upon hearing his genuine words, Celeste smiled and said, "I am pleased at your change of heart. I can feel the death of many here recently. Innocent, some, but many who planned to bring destruction upon this place. I will soon be carrying their spirits off for judgment. I am pleased that it was not you who made that choice." Seeing the look of confusion on how she would know this, she answered crisply, "I am the daughter of a mighty Shinigami. I can feel death and how it happened as easily as if I saw it with my own eyes. That has gained you a little leniency from your brashness." She sighed. "Being here allows me to receive bits and pieces of the heart of a nation. This nation screams a nearly united mighty battle cry. A will of fire. And as such I grant it, your personal fire reforged to help it burn even brighter, and you 15 years of your fire's might back." Hiruzen's body, which ached daily, started to feel lighter. The tense muscles began to relax and even some of the wrinkles on his face vanished. He felt strength he never thought he'd feel again. And while he was grateful at the change, he did secretly hope for a chance to see his wife Byakuya one more time before meeting her on the other side. Her death during the Kyuubi attack at the hands of the masked man made him a bit more bitter than he would have been otherwise. "I sense your grief at missing a loved one, but you have been stubborn and foolish, thus I shall not grant you this boon." Hiruzen wanted to object, to tell her take his years back, if only to allow a few minutes with the woman he loved so dearly, but he learned in short order that once Celeste said something, it came to pass. "I thank you for your gift, Celeste-sama. And I understand." Celeste again was impressed at the leader's ability to learn and adapt. She didn't like going back on her word, but a smaller orb appeared in front of Hiruzen. His eyes widened in realization, but looked up at Celeste and she answered his unanswered question, 2 hours, same rules as Tsunade. Hiruzen stood from his knelt position and bowed respectfully. Though his personal deity was of another faith, he allowed himself to show her the respect she deserved. "And to you, Jiraiya-chan," Celeste said seductively, which made even the super pervert redden much to her amusement. "I considered punishing you for using the old description of my likeness in your books, which froze Jiraiya in place, fear adorning his face despite his attempts to keep it hidden." Celeste, still amused, continued, "But you never once made me part of the perverted parts of the books, and always represented me in a respectful manner. I don't know whether to be pleased or offended," she joked slightly. Realization hit Jiraiya. "You read my books." Celeste only laughed at his sudden outburst, forgetting his fear. "Not initially, I admit. But your student had a copy on him when he joined my father. So he became a fan, and I found it and thought about burning it, but I was mentioned on page 3 of the book and was curious." "You do good work, pervert." Jiraiya couldn't help himself. "I thank you, my lady, but I am not a pervert. I am a super pervert." Celeste nearly fell over at the pure madness of what she had just seen and allowed herself a small laugh and said, "You're amusing. But now down to business," she said, having gotten serious suddenly. She nodded and Jiraiya too began to de-age. But as he was in sage mode, something began to occur. The elder toads began to de-age as well. But they deactivated their sage modes and departed from Jiraiya's shoulders. Jiraiya felt right. He didn't deactivate his sage mode. His oversized wart-filled nose returned to normal size. His bulging toad-like features returned to a fully human shape, but not the markings which adorned his face. He then stood, strength surging through him with which he'd never known. Jiraiya. He was not complaining, but asked, "Why, my lady?" Celeste smiled a warm smile and answered him earnestly, "You took time away from your mission to seek out your friend to help an innocent child. But not just any child. Your gran." Celeste stopped frozen as she saw the look of terror behind Jiraiya's eyes as she amended, "Excuse me. I meant to say godson," to which Jiraiya mentally thanked her, to which she gave a small nod, acknowledging that thanks. "You stood firm against your sensei in wisdom, rather than anger. You deserve much more than what you believe I have given you. And you have received it. You are now a fully realized sage of MT. Myoboku with all of the powers that comes with. Only one other had been worthy of this gift. Ironically, he was of this village too. There was no need to expand further as there were very few sages in the world, much less from Konoha. The Shodai Hokage Senju Hashirama drew in natural energy as he drew in breath and was considered the most powerful sage since the Sage of the Six Paths. I place these 2 orbs in your possession, Jiraiya-chan. One is for Naruto to speak to his mother and father when the time is right. He will make that decision. Not any of you, she warned as she looked to all present except the Anbu who'd recently arrived, but found themselves unable, and without the desire to help their Hokage. The Anbu cat realized it was an external force that prevented action, but she still could not attempt to go against it. She did see the transformations of the elder shinobi however, but could say nothing. Her anger rose as the feeling of helplessness nearly overtook her. But she suddenly felt a calming presence. It was disconcerting, but at least she still kept her wits about her, she pondered. Hokage Dono, Celeste inquired diplomatically. I have a mission for the Hidden Leaf, and I take it my payment was part of the transformations you all received. The renewed vigor of its Hokage, and 2 of its legendary Sannin and its summon partners to protect the leaf is worth far more than the cost of your, what do you call them? Oh yes, S-rank missions. Do you not agree? Sarutobi took a moment, then nodded his assent. My mission, should you wisely accept it, is to find Naruto a home to live in. Not necessary a shinobi family. And do what you can to lighten his burden. Those here in the village treat him as a pariah. I know you can do it through fear, but I recommend this be a yearly mission. One that takes time, which will keep you in good standing with the village. And allow Naruto to grow and mature in such a way that he will be able to continue to endure hardships if he must, but not if unnecessary. The last thing is, I would like Naruto to be included in the discussion about his would-be assassin. I can feel her near. I would have ended her myself, but I know from you and Jiraiya's thoughts that she was not in her right mind when she attacked the boy. I want to see how truly strong Naruto can become by the next time I visit. It could be in a month, or in 10 years. Please don't let his training waver. He told me he plans on taking your hat one day, Hokage Dono. Let's see just how strong his resolve is. Jiraiya, Tsunade, Cat, and Hiruzen stood stunned. Hiruzen could only nod his agreement to her terms. But then asked, you have granted us such great boons, yet you want us to train Naruto-kun. Wouldn't it be more prudent for you to train him, or grant him powers to jumpstart his training? Jiraiya would likely know this term best as he is our literary master. But we don't want Naruto to be a Gary Stu. That means he is a 7-year-old child with a mind of a 10 or 11-year-old. It means he will already have a slight tactical edge. I also gave him a small gift of protection. Any more from me and he would be another like your speed demon child on the floor over there. Or that other one who fought you and your successor 7 years ago. Let's take it one step at a time and see where the chips land and let Naruto carve out a piece of his own destiny. He is what Jiraiya knows as a child of prophecy, but that doesn't mean he shouldn't have his own life. His own way. His own choices. Uzumaki Naruto is going to be something very special if shown the love of a family, and the tough love of caring Shisho. Also the Kyuubi no Yoko. Kurama will serve as a servant for Naruto. So have no fear of your village coming under attack from him again, she said, and without waiting for a reply, so for now I bid you all farewell. And like that, she was gone. All were now back on their feet except a still sleeping Shisui and Naruto. Hiruzen looked in the direction of Kat, who appeared beside him as he immediately said, "The events of this room never happened. If asked why we all look so young, it was accidental side effect of an experimental collaboration jutsu by Jiraiya and Tsunade, which I have now forbidden as it's beyond kinjutsu. Also find out how much Itachi knows, as he is close and most likely followed the events as you did. If he knows about all of this, give him the same instructions," he said with urgency. While Kat was reluctant, she was still an Anbu directly under the Hokage and stated, "Your will is law." With that settled, Hiruzen's heartbeat, along with his students, calmed. Shima and Fukusaku rejoined Jiraiya on his shoulders and tried to reform the triumvirate that was the former full sage mode. They succeeded, but with a surprising result. The power was so intense, they had to again deactivate Sage Mode after a few seconds, else they became overwhelmed. Naruto's mindscape. I take it you heard that you are to help protect Konoha, correct? Celeste asked, and Kurama nodded half-heartedly. You will also be given a little more room in here. His cage's size converted to an open field, but with seals still hidden underneath said field. It was beautiful, but should Kurama's intent become benevolent, the seals would do their work. I shall be keeping an eye on things from afar, but you will be my eyes and ears here. And here, a scroll appeared before Kurama. Naruto shall become my Ryu shinobi. None before have been worthy of it, but I have a feeling that little boy shall change the very world for the better. This shall be granted to him by you when he becomes a shinobi. Whether of Konoha, or in his mind. When he is truly a shinobi, you will know. Surprised at his new accommodations, which appeared in the blink of an eye, Kurama snarled out a very foxy smile. He was content to give the boy a chance as he was given one by his kind's mistress. Celeste then walked slowly away from Kurama, each step with a slight transformation following until she was once again a massive dragon. With a mighty roar, her powerful legs bent, then propelled her high into the air where her wings carried her up higher and higher. She was carried beyond the confines of the inner sanctum of Naruto's mind to the great beyond. The place no mortal should ever know, while alive. The next day, Naruto's hospital room. Naruto's visitors being the only civilians to raise a fuss with the hospital staff, and the Anbu directly warned that they would not leave until making sure he was alright. It took nearly 20 minutes to calm Ichiraku Tsuki and his teenage daughter Ayame to calm down slightly. But not because they had given up on anything. Ayame gently tugged her father's chef coat and walked alongside him till they reached another side of the building. Once there, they entered that elevator and went up to the 6th floor where Naruto was being cared for. Once the doors opened, 2 more Anbu stopped them as Ayame tried to run past and screamed, "Let me see my Naruto-kun." The Hokage, who had just recently arrived, heard the commotion and walked out of Naruto's room and sighed. He'd hoped to talk with Naruto before anyone else, but Naruto's eyes started to open upon hearing Ayame's voice. What's the meaning of this noise? Hiruzen, head under cover of his hat, commanded his question be answered without delay. Killing intent which would normally bring civilians to their knees. And while it did make the Ichiraku duo wobble, they would not back down. I don't care if you're the Hokage or not. I want to check in on my Naruto-kun. Ayame screamed with venom lacing her voice. Hiruzen felt a headache coming on as he heard these words, Ayame ne-chan. Naruto ran out of the room, IVs yanked out of him as the 7-year-old jumped between the Anbu and his precious people. He screamed at the Anbu, not even considering the old man could have done anything to hurt his Nakuma. Get back! Naruto screamed fiercely. The Sandaime only sighed and ordered, "Let them pass. I will talk with Naruto with them present." This seemed to pacify both Naruto and Ayame while Tsuki remained vigilant in his careful gaze, not leaving the Anbu until they vanished. The moment they did, a slightly bloody Naruto, whose IV came undone, fell to his knees in pain. The adrenaline rush now faded. Before a nurse or doctor could be called, Naruto's new Tsurusit tattoo glowed green and his wounds sealed, and his pain faded very quickly. More quickly than it ever had before. Naruto stood up and shook off the slight disorientation. He looked at Ayame and Tsuki in expected anticipation of fear. Ayame ran over to him and grabbed him in a big hug, to which he returned in spades. Hiruzen didn't even sense the slightest chakra when Naruto's wounds healed. Tsuki looked to Hiruzen and said, "I don't care what those in the civilian and military councils say. I want to adopt Naruto. Effective immediately. He needs a family, and he's got one right here who loves him." The Hokage wanted to strangle him, as he already had the same idea, but didn't want to get the boy's hope up, as there were legalities which prevented that from happening. Naruto has family which appeared recently. They were on a long-term mission. His godfather Jiraiya, he has asked to take the boy in. Naruto, having heard this, screamed out, "No way in hell, old man. I have been here in this world for 7 years and have heard nothing about a godfather. Tsuki Oji-san and Ayame Ne-chan have been by my side as much as you have. I will stay alone before I betray what they have done for me." Datbeo. While the Hokage wanted to smack Naruto back to reality, as he was only a child, he remembered that Naruto had the protection of a goddess. Angering her by ignoring her request would not go over well. So he opted to act more from a diplomatic standpoint. "I understand where you are coming from, Naruto, but you are still a child under my care as Hokage. I decide where you go. You do well to remember to show me the respect my position grants," he warned, and was pleased when Naruto noticeably paled. "Sorry, Oji-san. It's just that I will lay my life on the line to protect my precious people. I want that to one day extend to the rest of the village, which is part of the reason I want that hat one day. You obviously have found people who care about you, Naruto. But you should know that your godfather, the Sandaime wisely opted to test, wavered through the swamps of the grasslands, the hills of the mountainside, and even the very volcanoes surrounding the land of fire, to ensure a doctor good enough was brought here to save you." Naruto took a moment to let all of what he was told set in. Instead of letting regret, or contempt toward his living relative hold him back, he answered simply, "I will forever be grateful that he chose to show himself in my time of greatest need, but he did leave me on my own for 7 years. I will give him a chance at friendship, and maybe one day we can be a family, but Tsuki Oji-san and Ayame-chan are already family." "I was afraid of this," the Sandaime thought warily. "I wanted Naruto with Jiraiya, or even Tsunade, which would have kept her bound close to the leaf. I could have these two eliminated, or just throw them out, but that would only make Naruto resentful and might slow up his training. Maybe even cause him to give up on the idea of being a shinobi," Hiruzen thought. While Sarutobi Hiruzen wasn't a bad or evil man per se, he was still a politician. And to top things off, he still had to worry about Naruto's new guardian deity popping in uninvited, though he was still grateful for what she did for him and his 2 remaining students. With a resigned sigh, he said to Tsuki, "How about hearing what young Master Uzumaki has to say?" Tsuki and Ayame looked at each other, then Ayame got on her knees, and held a hand out to Naruto, who eagerly grabbed it as she asked, "So what do you say, Ototo-kun?" Naruto jumped into her arms and squealed, "What do you think? I'm going to have a family." The Hokage took a deep breath and said, "Meet me in my office tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. sharp. Do not be late. And Naruto, don't forget to go pick up your homework from Yumino Iruka. You're being transferred into his class at the academy. He is hard-nosed, but fair. Am I understood?" He asked them all. "Hi Oji-san. Hi Hokage-sama. Hi Hokage-sama. They all called out in unison, though Ayame's was notably weaker as she was really pissed at how the Hokage let Naruto live the way he had for so long. Hey Oji-san, Naruto called to the Hokage. Yes Naruto, the Hokage asked, clearly annoyed and wanted to leave and go smoke his pipe. Is the lady that tried to kill me really a Konoha Kunoichi? I saw her hit IITE and it was slashed. He noticed that, did he? Sarutobi noted, impressed. Yes Naruto. She was under someone else's strong, hypnotic jutsu, he answered, not wanting to go into the nuances of the different types of genjutsu at that very moment. She's been cleared of all of the charges, but will still need to be punished for allowing herself, a jonin, to fall for such a ploy, he explained wisely. Naruto, not missing a chance to show off some of his new intelligence and wisdom gained from the few seconds in Celeste's gem's presence, offered, as I was the one attacked, I request to speak to her and offer my input at her hearing. I believe we started learning about Konoha law in class recently, and I have the right to face my attacker face to face. Sarutobi was flabbergasted by the young boy's words. Not only did he quote Konoha statutes, if a bit roughly, but he requested a meeting with one of the most dangerous women in Konoha. I don't believe that wise Naruto. But Naruto wouldn't have it. He then stated, as set up by a joint commission created by the Nadaime Hokage as well as the daimyo of the time, not even you can deny my request. And for the record, that was in the book under the Bible in my room. Konoha's Legal System, by Uchiha Fugaku. I was reading it since the TV was acting up after I woke up. Hiruzen nearly fell face first to the ground after hearing those words and gently pulled Naruto to the side, out of earshot of his would-be family. In this case, Tsuki and Ayame wanted to back the Hokage's mindset to not allow Naruto to see the woman. Especially Ayame. She might have only just turned 18, but her maternal instincts were of a seasoned mother. Away from the Ichiraku family, fine, the Sandaime conceded angrily. She can visit you here. Your new family will be in the next room over, and 4 Anbu will be on guard in case her programming somehow gets reactivated. Hell, I might even come as I don't see how you could possibly have anything to say to her. I doubt she will hurt you now that your godfather Jiraiya placed a jutsu on her to protect her mind, but one can't be too careful. After Naruto agreed to those terms, as if he had any say in them, he joined Tsuki and Ayame as they walked him back to his room to finish resting before he was potentially released in a few days. A few hours later, after Ayame and her father were forced to leave as visiting hours were over, Naruto didn't want to go to sleep as he already slept for days already, but sleep did finally overtake him. 2 hours after that he felt something. Fear. It woke him out of a deep sleep, and left him more alert than he'd ever been. In front of his hospital door stood this incredibly beautiful, yet feral-looking woman with black hair. She wore a trench coat and a black mini skirt. Her shirt was mesh, and Naruto received an eyeful which made his little cheeks redden as he tried to remember what Wolf told him in a book of advice he wrote up for him after saving him from one of the store vendors he pranked. He remembered to force his eyes upward above the neck and remembered quickly to apologize. I'm so sorry. I'm not one of those perverted guys, I promise. By the way, who are you anyway? Naruto asked with concern after remembering the recent events of his life. She sighed and said, "Be very glad I am not easily offended. I wear clothes like this to distract male ninja on the battlefield. You'd be surprised how many are caught off guard because they are thinking, with a part of their body that's not their head." Naruto nodded dumbly, but easily accepted what she said. She wore a Konoha Hitai-ite. If a kunoichi wanted to give him free ninja advice, who was he to argue? He'd have to be careful in the field when he graduates and not fall for the same things she just warned him of. Arigato kunoichi-san, Naruto thanked. As for who I am, kid, I am someone you should be scared shitless of, she said with a sadistic grin. I was your would-be. Mitarashi Anko.